We talk football and current events, sitting and chatting with the very best guests. With two Scottish boys and we're loving it. So if you like witty banter, check the former #1 podcast on iTunes. Sitting and chatting.
Hello and welcome back to the Sitting and Chatting podcast. I'm Whyte.
I'm Thayjamieallan.
Jamie, another podcast inside, another podcast away from our wonderful setup, another podcast sit here looking like a bunch of dafties on Zoom.
No. Aye, got used to it though. I dare say enjoying it. The run, if anything, the runs keep me going. The ideology of going back to what we believe is normality is not happening. So,
eventually, just some point in the mad future.
But the run that we're on has been an absolute blessing. So, long may it continue.
Well, listen, I've got great news. I managed to book out 2 slots for the pub.
Holy shit! For what dates?
I know. For the 29th and the 1st for the 30th and the 1st of April, May. So
unbelievable scenes, if you ask me.
I know. However, unfortunately, poor news. We can only take 4 people to the pub at once. That's a max.
Have you named your 4 yet?
Nah, so I'm finding out tonight. But I was actually going to ask you as well if you fancied it at some point I could book another slot.
Oh, happily. I've become an alcoholic during this period, so yes. And before the podcast started, I will admit that I was on the phone to my dad asking him to get me alcohol.
I could hear that coming through.
So it's just what's left to offer, So just get a swallowed in you. That's the way I see it. But at any point that the pub becomes available, I'll be partial to partake in such ventures.
Sounds good then. We'll get a wee session booked. But anyway, today's podcast a bit different to normal, It's,
I thought you were going to say it's brought to you by Hot Street. I was like, holy fuck!
Nah. We're only sponsored by the wonderful Anchor at the moment. Anchor, make sure you download. But today will be a bit different. We're not going to make topics because the world's boring. I mean, the most interesting story that's happened in the week is a boat's currently stuck in Panama. I mean, that kind of says it all at this point, doesn't it? So we're doing something a bit different today. A bit of a look back as such because, since New Year, me and Jamie have been doing very well about uploading these. We've had a lot of new guests on. And, it's coming up to the 4-year mark. It'll be 4 years in July. I've been doing this a long time. We've been very thankful to sort of interview a lot of different people in that time, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And we thought we'd go back and look at the episodes and, and going with with the thumbnail and the title, but incredibly clickbait here. So what we're doing, and I will try and see if I can bring it up now. Bear with me if there's any technical difficulties.
Most likely there will be.
Can you see that?
I can see that. What happened? Read your list.
Wonderful. Now, this is, as you can see by title, Sitting and Chatting episodes with guests. Now, we've got a few categories here, okay? There's elite, there's decent, there's okay, there's could be improved on, and never again.
So now, is this up to the very last guest we done?
I have updated this now so that we have every single guest now on here.
Damn, right, okay.
Now, 27 in total, I believe. Now, if I have missed someone out, though, I do want you to. Thankfully, I do have the board as well of all the quickfire times. So if I see someone's missing, I might quickly look across. But as far as I'm aware, we've done 27 guests in 3 3/4 years now. Now,
believable scenes.
Now, to stop any arguments potentially from backing out of this, this isn't based at all on the person. Obviously, the person does come into account when it comes into the episodes. However, each episode is done as an episode as a whole. So, we're Were the topics good? You know, did it flow well? Was it interesting? Did you and me perform well? Was the guest good? All that sort of stuff. It's not based at all on the person or our feelings to them, because probably the list would look very different otherwise.
Yep.
And you know, just to be, you know, as you know, much of a suck up as this going to make me sound, you know, we've been lucky to interview pretty much, bar a few, basically our mates, either yours or mine or both, during this time. So thankfully, we've not really had anyone on that we've hated, or at least not that I've not. We might get some new scoop out of you today, but personally for me, I've not interviewed anyone that I've hated, and I'm not hated to any episode.
Hate's a very strong word,
So likelihood is I'm going to ignore the never again category, but you know, if you feel strongly, then it might go down into there. And you know, what I will say is, for this to matter, we have to come some sort of agreement. So for example, if you and me, if I said, for example, elite, and you said never again, we would have to meet in the middle and say,
yeah,
okay.
no, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, and this once again isn't obviously in order of guest appearances, but we'll go over each one, you know, a wee bit.
Of course, I.
So the first one, Struan. This was back. This was done back at the second ever set, back at my mum's house. You know, one of the longer ones as well. I have to be honest. In the last week, I've got, because me and Jamie.
Oh, wait, hold on, bear with me. And so is this he's only made one appearance, isn't he?
He's only made one appearance,
and it was titled "Life in China" or something like that, wasn't it?
Life in China.
Yeah. Right, sorry, what were you saying? Carry on.
No, I was just going to say that. Fuck, what was I going to say? I can't remember, but anyway, it was one of our longest ones at the time. I think we got some good information out of him. However, from my point of view, I would say, I don't know, there's something about that fucking room that we used to record in there. It was so hot every single time. And the camera issues that we always had in that room of recording for 12 minutes, I never think we'd done an elite interview in that room.
No. You know, here's the thing, right? So his humour is elite. The relationship that we have with him is elite. Him as a person is elite. The interview was tarnished by, you know, circumstances we couldn't overcome. But like I say, we got a good insight into, you know, what life is like in China. It was, you know, it was a very good podcast if we didn't have the technical issues. So taking that aside, honestly, he's a contender for up there.
You think elite?
No. Like, I think he's a contender for it based on, you know, him and what he brought. But in terms of, you know, the actual presentation of it all, it was a decent podcast.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking between decent and okay. Like you said, you know, elite guy, I love him. He's one of my best mates, you know, for time now. However, unfortunately, I do think, looking back on it, there was a lot of parts of it that were good, but I think especially at the start with quite a few of these people as well, you see they're a wee bit nervous. And Struan, whenever he's not around people, I think, unfortunately, he doesn't know as well, can often come across as quite nervous if you're not speaking to him.
He's so humorous. He's so funny, he doesn't know it. But
so, shall we go for decent then?
He's definitely decent. I think it'd be a disrespect to put him in a low, to be honest, just based on what he brought to the table, effectively.
Okay, now, Ewan. Now, we've had Ewan on now 3 times. We've done he was the second ever guest we'd done. He was, and then he'd done another solo appearance, and then he'd done the foursome episode with Fergus.
Yeah.
Now, the first episode that he'd done with us, I think, is an elite episode. The fact that I've known Ewan for so long, and the fact that he opened my eyes to so many things I didn't know about him, and also life in Canada and traveling around.
Yep.
And having issues at home, which was nice of them to chat about because they didn't need to. That, for me, is one of the best podcasts we've ever done. The second one, it will always be elite for that ending of how he managed to get the record in quick fire time. That will always be up there for that reason. The foursome episode, though, I think is one of the worst episodes we've ever done.
It was poor. Like, it could have been improved on, but
if
know,
that was in person, I think it would have worked. I think just because it was done on Zoom, it didn't work.
To be one with the situation though, but honestly, I've got to agree. I was already thinking contender for elite based on the, you know, the first podcast alone. It was just like you say, it was so insightful. But not knowing him to then knowing him, and going into the second podcast, I felt like there was nothing else I could know about him, having had the first episode. And then the second time he appeared, he brought like a whole barrel of new stuff, and you were like, "Fuck me!" It was like the gift that kept on giving. So he was definitely elite.
Yeah,
by
so
far.
we agreed on elite then.
100%, aye.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got to thank him a lot as well because he's helped us out on, like I said, 3 occasions now, which he didn't need to do.
No, he's a definite G.
Right, next one. I know this might be a bit controversial because we've talked about this before, but Neil's one. Neil's quite a recent one of my oldest mates. Looking back on it, a very rough start. The first 10 minutes are quite difficult to watch. And then beyond that, for me at least, I thought it was a decent pod. It would be under the decent category for me. But I know you've got different feelings about this episode. So what are your thoughts?
It could have been improved on. If it was in person, I think it would have been a bit different. Based on the actual recording of it. From what I learned on the podcast, there wasn't much. I took a proper backseat for that one, whereas maybe 85% of these guests will be predominantly your mates, so people will think automatically I take a backseat regardless. It's not the case.
No.
I listen, whether I'm proactively speaking to people or whatever. Is neither here or there. But with this one, I took a proper back seat, and for me, could be improved on.
Okay. Well, I think it's still decent, so put it in okay. I will say though, I think if we do one again, if we ever do one again with Neil, I'd love to do one in person. I think that if we had a few drinks in us and done it in person, I think we could have a really good chat and then potentially be able to move into decent category. But we'll go on from that, I suppose. Ben Gilmore, someone that I don't see a lot of. That was one of the first ones that you sort of brought to the table. What's your thoughts on it, I suppose, looking back on it?
It was okay. See, the thing with Ben is, right, he's a very intelligent person, but he's got humour, and we get each other a lot. Well, at least we did in school. We don't speak too much now, but like his banter and his humour I get, and he gets mine, and it always worked. I digress for that though, and basically the actual interview and from what we learned, I learned a lot about him that I didn't know. But it was an okay podcast, it wasn't outstanding. Very, very in the middle, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, the credit that I will give to him is that I think that he understood it a lot more than, say, some of the other people on here. I think he got the concept of it a lot better than other people.
That's what I'm saying. He's very, very intelligent.
Yeah, but yeah, it would probably be okay. I think it's almost a shame because he's done, a lot of people we talk to, relatively young, and I think Ben's got a lot more life experience now, and I think it'd be something that I would like to interview again, maybe even like this year or a bit further down the line, whatever it might be. But I would like the opportunity to speak to him again. But definitely. For now, we will say okay then.
Yeah.
Right. Alba's podcast. For me, elite. For a few reasons. It was, she was really great at the interview, considering that she was someone that was quite nervous about it beforehand. I think she'd done a very good job. The whole sort of backstory with her family and life in France was something that was very interesting to both you and me. And I think we were able to answer different sort of sides to it. And of course, Stendhal, she was like top of Quickfire for about probably 2 years, maybe a bit less than that. So for me personally, it's an elite, but what do you think?
No, I agree with that. I thought, because she did strike me as very nervous. And I don't know her too well, but of what I do know, and when I do see her or speak to her, she's as long as she's had a drinking her, she's very open-minded, and forthcoming in terms of having a conversation with you. Whereas prior to that, you know me, rather big personality. I'm quite outgoing, if you will. I'm happy to speak to anybody, and I'm not a life of the party, but I'm always present. You know I'm there. Do you know what I mean? I'm not one of the people who are in the corner taking part. Whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know. But from what I do know is Alba was very, very shy. Leave it at that. Give me 2 seconds. Speak.
He's leaving us on.
Go for it.
Leaving us on hold. This is a nervous moment for Alba.
Say that again.
The
What is it?
tension's building. Will he get his alcohol?
Right. Aye, just get a couple of them then. Aye, and then mind the other ones. No, get the bowls, aye. And you just get 4 or something of them. No, I get 6 of them actually, because Mum will have some as well. Aye, that'll do, aye. Aye. Cool. Is that everything? Aye. Cool. Right, I'll speak to you, man, up the road. Ta-ra. Right.
Shocking that for your dad.
Fair enough. Right, I'll start from where I was at there. What did I say? She's very shy, yeah.
Yeah, that's where you left it.
Aye. But other than being shy, on the podcast, once, we were about 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes in, she opened up and she told us this whole life story and this whole, I always, for me anyway, the way I see other cultures living is crazy. So like the way I see it is, you go to work, you go out on a night out on Saturday, like in different parts of the world, it's so different. Like, and to get that insight was just mad. As well as the rest, it wasn't just the life in a different country that she brought to it. But she's very shy ordinarily, is the way I see it, and then the way she approached the podcast, I thought was really good after 10, 15 minutes into it. So elite by far, and that score at the end of it back then was just mad. So yeah, definitely elite for me.
Nah, definitely elite. Right, next one, Joe Ski, someone who I used to work with, still doing music to this day. Performed obviously at a few festivals since we've had him on. He's done really well. Someone with very unique personalities.
Good on him.
For me at the time, I would have said it would have been decent when it came out. I'm kind of teetering on okay now, maybe. Now that we've done more, I don't think it was a bad episode by any means. I just think that
the thing is, the way I see it, right, if you'd done that podcast now, it would be never again, because of the way it was for me. But at the time, it was something different. It was something new. You got to learn a whole new side of music that neither of us, would have been too. You maybe would have known about it, but you wouldn't have been, into it. You maybe listened to his stuff, but you wouldn't actively listen to another artist of his genre. Then I heard some of his music, and then I searched up other artists in that field, listened to that, and it's a whole different meaning to music, which was a bit bit crazy. So it was very, very insightful, and it was actually good, and it was at its time it was decent. But as of now, if you were to do that exact same podcast, obviously better shot, say we done it in person now, it would look a lot more appealing. But in general, it was like right now it'd be a never again. But if you
Really?
were going off when it was, it was decent. So if it was me, it would be okay.
Yeah, I think okay is fair.
Very, very, very borderline.
Okay.
Decent, by the way, because in its time, in its prime, it was good.
I think as well, we were talking about before with like Gilmore sort of understood it even though he wasn't a part of this world. I think maybe in the opposite way. I think Joe sort of got the sort of chill back aspect that we liked to bring, but also in the same regard didn't quite get the sort of maybe the question sort of side of things and the and like the game and that at the end. I don't think he quite understood the sort of purpose of that, and that's not to discredit him. It can sort of hit people out of nowhere when you've been chatting for an hour and a half, but like I think he got it when he needed to be, and for now it's definitely an okay. And I haven't spoken to him in a long time now, but hopefully one day I'll be able to again soon. Next one, Bradley. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts?
Here's the issue I face, right?
Right.
Bear with me. Right. So here's the issue I face. So I messaged his bird prior to this starting.
Okay.
Right. And I gave her a wee insight. Right.
Well, you told her this was coming.
I told her I was in a tier list. No, I told her on the pretense I was going to put her higher than Bradley to piss him off.
Okay.
But the truth be told is, her podcast was genuinely better, in my opinion. We'll move on to her afterwards, right? But Bradley, considering this is probably like, as much as I'll not admit it to him, although he will listen to this, he's probably one of my closest pals. Other than the obvious few that I talk to on a regular basis. But for Bradley, his podcast was surprisingly very, very good. For what I expected, because I gave you my kind of thoughts on it. No, it's true. I'll not lie. From what I expected, for what I told you prior to going into that, I told you it would be quite boring, that it would be very difficult to get in and out of him because he wasn't very forthcoming, and he never has been. Ever since he's been with Rachel, he has came out his shell a bit, but I still didn't expect much for the podcast. He understood it straight away. He knew what we were doing. He knew how to approach the questions, and he brought a bit of humour in, which I didn't fucking expect. But in general, I thought it was a decent podcast. I wouldn't say elite because there was nothing outstanding that could have put it up to the elite. Like it didn't bring an insight to Alban, France, or Ewan with trouble at home. Like, it never brought that personal or crazy aspect in it, but what it was very good for what I expected. I think is maybe where my head's swithering.
Okay. Now, for me, in my opinion, with guests, if you're not just talking about episodes with you or me in it, right? That is the worst I've ever been, was in that interview. You carried that interview entirely. And that's to be expected with also, you know him and I didn't.
Yeah.
However, I feel I was completely off form on that day. And I think it shows. I think it really does show.
You were off form, not on the basis of who it was on. It might have took you by surprise, or you might have struggled with the actual interview itself on that particular day. But I don't think that was that particular podcast, because there's been, we'll move on to the guests obviously in the future, but James Letford, Dylan, these people you didn't really know too well. I know you know James, but I'll speak to him on a regular basis in comparison to what you will.
Yeah.
And you still managed to do better in those podcasts than what you did with Bradley's. I seen that.
I know. Yeah.
But see, the issue is, right, with Bradley's podcast, I didn't expect it to go that way, but the issue with Bradley's podcast is because everything was so personalised for me and him.
Yeah.
It was just conversations we were having about stuff we've done, because there was no before. Do you know what I mean? Like his school life and his, college days or whatever, or uni days. Like the difference between that and another student we've had on is I already know everything, which made it very difficult.
I think as well the problem is that you sort of said to him in that as well, which I didn't maybe appreciate when I was coming from sort of my line of questioning, is that he's someone that's developed over a very small space of time, i.e. the last few years. So, the early stages, okay, there was a few funny moments about his early life, but for the most part, it's more what he's done in the future, because as he put it, he didn't really do an awful lot in school. He didn't, and I'm not saying this to insult the boy, I'm just sort of saying, I think his life after, like school and that is clearly a lot more entertaining, and he was clearly a lot more happier with that point in his life and a lot more happier to talk about that. But I suppose when you come from of a traditional sort of way that we have quite a linear way for interviewing most guests, if we start from the beginning all the way up until now sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately that suffered because of it. And like I said, I was quite shit on it. So for me, being honest, and it's nothing to do with him, I would put it on could be improved. So where would you put it?
I would say it was a decent, for what I expected it was decent, but I would be more than happy with okay, because like from what I expected, that was an elite podcast in comparison to what I expected, just to give you an idea.
Right, okay, yeah.
But I know it's no elite, do you know what I mean? Because like I said to you, it's not brought the aspects that the other two that's in elite has brought, but it was phenomenal in comparison to what I expected. But he's, to give you an insight to Bradley, it was Call of Duty, Tinder, and he actually grew into a person. Like honestly, and I hope he hates me for saying that, but that is true. Well, he's good now. He's a good guy.
Yes, and it was like I said, there's none of these like. Well, no, actually, if I'm thinking about it, honestly, I do hate that episode. That's more because of me, not because of him. So. Aye. It's one of those things, though, just like everyone we've had on, thankfully, has been very sound. There's been no one that's made complaints or kicked up a fuss sort of thing, which is nice. And,
what I find is mind-blowing, though, is we've agreed on literally everyone besides two, and both of them are in okay at the moment.
Yeah, it's not like it's not a massive... I was expecting a lot more disagreement at this point, It might come.
It is getting into it.
Right. Ben's one. I'm actually interested because I don't think I asked you this at the time. Now, Ben's first hour was okay. If we only took the first hour of that podcast, it would be an okay for me. However, the second half is a high decent to elite for me personally. Now, that obviously can't be looked upon the fact that the first hour was okay. Ben as well's one of these people, thankfully was very kind to help out. I don't think he kind of got the whole aspect of the podcast, so to speak, but he was still very willing to talk, and very similar to Gilmore, one of the smartest blokes that I know. It's again able to give good insight, especially at the end when we were doing like the news sort of side. He was very sort of insightful, and we were able to have good conversations from that.
He's literally the exact same for me with Ben. He's very intelligent. We get each other's humour. I don't know him too great, or nowhere near the level of what you would. But from school, leaving school, no speaking to him, and then speaking to him in that podcast, he's no changed.
No,
like
in a weird way, yeah.
Aye, like just his whole personality is just phenomenal. But for me, it was a decent podcast.
Decent.
I enjoyed it, and I would do it again if you know what I mean.
Yeah, in a weird way though, right? If you're looking at the other decent and Struan, weirdly, in a sense, I think I preferred Ben's one from a non-traditional point of view. I think Struan's from an actual podcast point of view is a better podcast, but I think for some reason, the chat that we had with Ben and what happened with Quickfire afterwards when he overtook Alba and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
That like second half was an elite tier podcast. It was just a shame the first half was maybe a wee bit slower than others, but yeah, for me, definitely decent. Right. Next one, Aidan.
This is where the disagreements could start, because I'm going to give you a proper insight here. So Aidan, prior to us starting the podcast, came into a Discord call with ours. Me, Dylan, Liam, Bradley, loads of us were in it. I don't think Bradley was there actually, but basically there was a few
playing good old clubs.
Aye, we're playing clubs, and his persona over that call painted a very bad picture. I didn't understand him at all. I didn't get him, and the call just made me, be like, oh, not for me. But he came onto the podcast. Excuse me. He came onto the podcast, and he was by far probably my favourite podcast I've done.
Wait, really?
It was amazing.
Your favourite podcast you've ever done?
The podcast was amazing. I enjoyed it. I actually went off thinking that was fucking great. And I could have sat there and spoke to him again for an hour or 2 hours about stuff, different topics. Incredibly intelligent. Very informative on the topic we were talking about. He answered the questions, he understood everything, he had his own plans, his ventures that he was doing, and he had, insight to every topic we had, new information on it. And he was also humorous as well. We got the banter that we were flinging his way, and he understood it. Up there with my favourite, and for me, 100% an elite podcast, by far. I think I spoke to you after the podcast as well, and said I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I knew you really enjoyed it. I just didn't know you felt that strongly about it. I didn't realise you felt it was one of your favourites.
Oh, it was great. Everything about it was phenomenal.
Good to hear, which, I'm sure they wouldn't mind us saying both you and me were a bit nervous about doing this one prior. I know.
Sceptical,
yeah.
Based on that one call. But it just shows you.
You can't judge a book by its cover, so to speak.
Exactly.
And, it was a nice surprise because, I didn't know. Like, I know Aidan relatively well, but not super well. I'm nowhere near as close to him as I am a lot of people on this list.
Yep.
And, yeah, he did very well. I'm more than happy to put elite, rather, as well.
I just thought it was...
I don't know why your head's cut off here, Aidan, but, you done well. Well done. Right. Now, another one for me, which I think is elite, which is weird because it was our first ever guest interview, our third ever podcast, I think, with Francis. Francis is someone I wish I could see more now. I was probably a lot closer with him at the time that we filmed this, due to, work and what have you. But I think he gave a really good insight. I didn't know him. I think I got to know him a lot more during that podcast than I have throughout a lot of our chats, and I really appreciate that. And I think he painted a really good picture of himself and, what to do, as a person. I think he came across very well. And for me...
He's a nice person.
Yeah, and consider as well, that was our first interview. If you go back and listen, if you ignore the terrible mic quality, it's genuinely, I think, an elite podcast. He, like I say, talked very well, and it's still one of my favourites, which is a testament to the fact that we've done 27 of them, and he was the first, and it's still one of my favourite.
See, I would argue elite. I would say it was decent.
Okay.
And if you were to put that podcast out now with the exact same information recorded better, it would probably be high, decent, maybe even elite. Okay. Look, thinking back on it anyway, it's parts that are very, very okay, but overall the actual podcast was decent. Okay. I'd struggle to say elite based on the 3 that's in there now, from my point of view anyway, in terms of what I enjoyed and what I learned.
No, that's perfectly fine. For me, it would be elite if this was me, but for you and me, then we'll go decent. I'm more than happy to put it high end of decent. I think
Francis, so is that if you listen, lovely person.
Oh yeah, no, lovely guy. Right, our most recent one, Rachel. First half, I thought was very good, probably decent. The first half, and this is nothing against her. It probably help. It probably goes a wee bit against, unfortunately, that she's potentially the youngest that we've had on the podcast. Maybe.
She will.
I think unfortunately, second half of the interview slightly tailed off compared to the first. But the first half is still very decent. So because the second half did tail off a wee bit, I would be tempted to put it in okay. But what are your thoughts?
So I enjoyed it more than Bradley's, but I think it was because I don't know her as well. Or didn't, should I say.
I think that's the good thing, especially to start, because you could see that both you and me are learning new things and want to ask new questions. And because she did live a different life compared to a lot of people, that was also a very good aspect of it.
Yeah, so the one part that I thought made it up there at elite, right? That isn't my judgment, but basically knowing you were in Jersey, was it Jersey? Hi, Jersey for
3 months.
3 months. And we FaceTimed maybe a handful of times, if that. Spoke on a regular basis. And I never quite understood just how crazy living on an island was. So when she came on and she spoke about it so freely and basically explained the several implications she had to go through to even get to school.
Yeah.
To get their bins emptied. That shit blew my mind.
Yeah, no, that part of the podcast was elite. There's no denying that.
So learning about, and then what it made me appreciate is the 3 months you had away for everybody, and understanding how you would have been on that island. So it brought a more personal meaning to what I was getting off her. Okay. It was, rather than it just being, oh, she lived there, this is how it was, blah blah blah. I related it back to something, which was you being away for 3 months, and it was like, fucking hell. Like, so when you were away, did you have to go through all this shit? Like, what was the island like? Blah blah blah. So for me in total, it was good to get to know her in general, because obviously she's going to be Bradley now, but she clearly likes the party, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So it was just like a very
that fucking story of when she was the most drunk, that is also very fucking good.
I know. There is a worse one that she told me afterwards, but she wasn't allowed to.
That's shocking.
She wasn't allowed to divulge. See, the thing is, she came on it so minded, and like you say, she's very young. She's young. She's a girl going on to a podcast with two guys that she doesn't know very well.
Yeah,
she was so open-minded and so forthcoming. I just thought it was really good. And she just spoke to us as if she knew us for years. So for that reason, I would say it is very, very high, decent.
So you're saying decent?
Aye, see, I would have put it in elite, but no, in fact, I would say it was elite. Based on what I've learned for the 3 that's in elite to what I learned from her and how I made it personal to myself, I would say it's elite.
I would...
Just to preserve Bradley's dignity, I will say we'll need to put it in decent. But
I also think decent's fair. I think there is elite moments in it. I think just unfortunately near the end we sort of ran out of things to chat about, and that's nothing, again, that's her fault. It's just unfortunate the way it goes sometimes, the way that something. Unfortunately, I think we got the best moments out of it at the start, which to be fair to her is an improvement, because with most of these there's a trend of it gets better as it goes along. Whereas this one was one of the few that start off straight out the gates. So for that, for me, I think is also decent.
Right.
I
think it should have been elite.
Just I struggled to see a picture there, but James Letterford, our lowest viewed podcast of all time.
I know.
Which is harsh, which is very harsh, because James gave a very good interview. James, especially the stuff that he was talking about, the Navy and survival training and the helicopter repairs, all that stuff's great chat, and I really enjoyed it. And James is a lovely guy, a bit similar to Francis in some ways, absolutely brilliant guy. I love chatting to him whenever he's back in Stirling. I don't think it quite hits elite, but for me, it's definitely decent.
It's decent. I mean, it's we had an elite conversation, we had elite banter, we had, it was drinking, it was free, it was happy. And it was obviously the time away for, the shite he goes through on a day-to-day basis. So it was good for both parties, for us and for him. So no, it was, for me, it was very elite in terms of the enjoyment aspect that I had, but and the insight he gave. But I would say it's a decent podcast, because obviously there's times in there that there was too many tangents in that
yeah, there was. James is
for it to be, an elite podcast.
James is someone that we do need to do a part 2 with at some point. James is someone that needs a second chance.
James would definitely be down for it as well.
Yeah, that's it. Like, the good thing, if you do tangents, unfortunately, you might miss a lot of details out. But I think if we've done 2 of them, you get a very good insight into them. But for now, definitely 100% a decent podcast. Keelan next. Now, Keelan surprised me in the sense that obviously one of my mates from college very kindly jumped on, and I think the best part of it, weirdly, is the part when you were chatting about like your nights out experience in Ireland, which is a part that I didn't know about you, and also a very good sort of, I think it's a very good part of the podcast, a very good listen to, especially that part.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
I think it was just going into it was a bit mad, because I didn't know at all, anything.
Yeah,
that was the issue for me with that podcast.
I think that's,
like you say, we managed to make it a bit personal during it as well.
I think part of the problem, and it's more my fault to a certain extent, with a lot of these ones back in the day. I mean, nowadays we really chat over who's coming on, not like in great depth, but we do chat over who's coming on, and we're good with sort of excuse me, good with forwarding information to each other about the other person to ask. But I think Keelan was unfortunately on the end of, he came at a time when it was just basically I would pick someone and then we come in, and it's good from a raw perspective, because you do genuinely get that natural sort of chat that we got during that of you guys. But unfortunately, I think maybe as a result of that, it's probably okay at best. I don't think we can put it to decent level.
Yeah, no, I would agree with it. I think the actual overall podcast could have been improved on, but for what we got at a subject that we couldn't get anything from, we actually squeezed the sponge as much as we could, which is why I was like, it could be improved on. But I think it was based on the knowledge we had. But definitely. For the general podcast and how he was, and the enjoyment levels, it was definitely okay.
Yeah, I think as well, I think I'd like to get Keelan on again at some point. Someone that, since we've done that, has gone on to do a lot of weird things, and has unfortunately been one of a big casualties of COVID, in the sense that because he's had to shield, he's had to basically have this whole year away. I think it'd be interesting to sort of dive into the psyche of someone that's had to basically isolate from everyone for a year. So maybe one day I would like to do that. Laura next. One of the ones that we done in Jersey. I think Lauren's the only guest one we done when I was in Jersey. Yeah. That was something I was going to bring up, by the way, the whole about the Rachel thing, how you're mentioning with the island. I can't believe, unfortunately, it was due to timing, but I can't believe we didn't do a podcast about me chatting about it more in depth when I came back. I know I've mentioned things here and there, but we've never done a proper deep dive, and that's unfortunately because as soon as I came back...
I think it was because you didn't enjoy it to a great extent. When you were back, you were so relieved, and I thought, like, we'll just leave it at that, because obviously it was, it wasn't a traumatic time in your life. It wasn't something that was like, it wasn't something that you were like, oh, I can never do that again. But it was the aspect of, it was clear that it wasn't the 3 months of your life that you would want back. No, but at the same time, it wasn't 3 months of your life you were like, fuck me, never again.
No, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? See if it wasn't, because obviously we tried to, the way it worked was I came back on like the 19th of December, and obviously we had to do the Christmas special with Dylan at the time, and so we had kind of had to sacrifice the Jersey episode at that point, and was at least my way of thinking it. And, you know, obviously Christmas special was great, and I'm glad we still do them, but it's one of those things of, I probably could have, you and me probably could have done a decent podcast about it, unfortunately, but
I definitely could have.
Yeah.
But
you'll live in. Maybe one day we will. Maybe one day we'll go into it, but who knows?
always a chance.
But anyway, yeah. Sorry. Back to the topic of Lauren. This one pisses me off so much because I fluffed the ball so much here. Lauren's unfortunately one of those people that have done quite a lot with herself in this life, and you know. I realised after we hung up the call, I had like so many other things written down. I'm just like, fuck, I should have brought this up. I think as well, that's what annoys me. She was great on the day, and you know, I always appreciate her coming on, and I would actually like to have her again in person. It's just one of those things of it was more of a fluff of the ball for me because I just realised there's so much.
I enjoyed it. I feel as though it was annoyingly rushed.
Say that again, sorry.
So like I really enjoyed it and I thought it was good, and I would definitely have her on again because she, like you said, has got a lot of stuff to talk about and she's done a lot of stuff. You know, I follow her on Instagram and I see stuff that she does, and she does look very interesting, you know, in the things she gets up to, but I feel as though it was very rushed. Like it was on a lunch break. It was like,
yeah.
It was the setup that we had was poor.
Yeah.
Which isn't Lauren's fault.
Yeah, she
was very kind to do on a lunch, which obviously, you know, is a risk within itself. So you know that it was hard. It was we could have got a lot more out of it.
Yeah.
So it technically could have been improved on, but for what we made out of it, it was okay. You know.
I would almost be tempted to put it could be improved upon, not due to her at all. But I think
no, I would agree with it. It was based on it was based on us, you know, and obviously she was on a lunch. It was the only time she could do it.
Yeah,
blah blah. Like we say, she's very busy. She does her own stuff. So
weirdly, she's one of the few people on here that needs more than an hour and a half. As odd as that might sound, but she did need more than an hour and a half, and I want to have her back on again. Whenever.
For your side, though, it could have been improved on. So that's what we'll go with.
Yeah. Plus, we have to be fair to these. But I mean, to be honest, I don't think there's any that might go in here. But we have to have something in here at least. Mark Wilson, love the guy. Really funny. I think the chat itself, although quite generic to a certain extent, nothing against him, but I think it was quite general chat. He gave us a good insight into Falkirk, he gave into a good insight into growing up. It was good as well to have someone from my course give more of an insight into that and their sort of thinking from it. But I do think beyond that, I think it was an okay podcast. Nothing jumps out in particular. I think though it did work. I think it was actually weirdly, along with James, maybe one of the better ones we've done in the old setup in the current flat. But I think at this point it's probably an okay podcast. What are your thoughts?
My memory doesn't serve me very well with this one, which is nothing on Mark. I remember him. As soon as I seen the picture, as soon as you said his name, I remember him. I remember aspects of the podcast, but in general, it would be hard for me to disagree or agree with you on the basis I can't mind enough of it to give an insight. What I would say is, based on that, from my point of view, it could have been improved on, but that's nothing on him. Do you know what I mean? I do remember the podcast. It's aspects of it that sticks out to me.
Right.
But in general, it could have been improved on from my side of things.
Okay. I'm happy to leave it and could be improved on. Right, Duncan, my flatmate.
Careful what we say there now.
No, like I'm going to be honest, and he likes to take the piss because he's still Goss. He's the reason why, unfortunately, Goss to number 1 on iTunes very briefly, but fuck him. There's parts of it that works really well and parts of it that didn't work really well. So obviously from the start, he's always had a fucked up sleep schedule. He just woke up for it. I do appreciate that he's still done it, even though he just woke up. But especially in the first 15 minutes, that really shows. And also at the tail end, it also really shows because Duncan, despite being, is he the oldest that we've had? I think either him and Joe, oh no, sorry, Craig as well, but he's one of the oldest we've had on. Duncan gets very easily distracted, so he was good for a sort of a bit of an hour of it, but you can see by the end he sort of getting distracted. And of course, they put on the worst ever time on the leaderboards by quite a distance up until Bradley came on. So I really
if I get Bradley never again for that score alone.
But it's like, I don't know whether to give it an okay or could be improved on, because
for me it could have been improved on.
Because I really like the stuff about South Africa at the start was very interesting, and me finding out more about his sort of travels between sort of cities and how he needed to move constantly was very interesting. However, it did tail off a wee bit. It wasn't a great start and it wasn't a great end looking back on it.
Yeah, middle was good. I would say it could have been improved on for that very reason.
Yeah,
it was a good chat in the middle was great.
Yeah. I'm looking at the others and could be improved, and I don't think it's better than the Lauren one overall, so I think it's only fair that it goes in there. Right, Lewis now, my oldest mate, as I'm pretty sure the podcast is titled. Good and bad. Lewis is someone that's very shy to do anything with camera stuff. He's quite the opposite of me. He never sort of, I wouldn't say he's not interested in media or that sort of side, but that was never a side of him that me and him ever bonded over. And, the whole podcast, I did take a lot of persuasion to do it. To be fair to him, when he was on, he speaks very well. He can hold a good conversation with both you and me. I do think it's probably marginally better than these three. For that reason, I put it in okay. I think the problem is just because I know him too well to a certain extent. And there can be that way, if there's someone that you don't know as well, the likes of your Aidens, you can ask new things that, are like, you can start from scratch to a certain extent. And I think as well, you knew Lewis was never one of your closest pals, but you knew Lewis at that point as well, relatively well. So I think that was just unfortunately a case of maybe we knew too much and we didn't know how to take it.
I knew Lewis more than I'd like to have let on going into the podcast, as well as obviously, at the time, it was between relationships, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, and I knew everything about both parties. Obviously, I know Chloe from primary school, which is his current girlfriend. So that, I knew that, like, when they were, the changeover, that sounds mental, but when, when the changeover was happening, like, we knew too much by far. For me in particular, but you in general.
Lewis is also a very private person, which didn't help. But I do think he carried the conversation well, and I still do think it's better than these three.
It gets the humour. That's a benefit.
Yeah,
he understands the banter. So
I would definitely put
it was okay. I'd like to get him on again though, because obviously there is there's aspects of Lewis that needs to be heard.
Right, Graham next. The Falkirk Cretin, as I'm pretty sure I titled it.
Graham's an interesting person.
I love Graham. Graham's one of the first people I became mates with at college. He's someone that I still speak to relatively regularly. We've also played clubs recently-ish with him. And I think the podcast aspect he getted, and there's parts of it which are, I would say, decent, but I think overall it's an okay podcast.
I would agree. There was nothing else I could give.
I
to sum it
wouldn't.
up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said that it's better than Joe's. I wouldn't say it's better than Neil's, and I wouldn't say it's better than Bradley. I wouldn't say. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's better than Bradley. So it has to be okay.
Yeah,
Megan, this one for
this
me.
is an interesting one.
This one for me is elite, right? And there might be a big difference here, but for me personally, this was an elite podcast. We had so much issues leading up to this. At the time, Stirling was going through a lot of construction, and it took us about an hour to drive to the studio, which was less than a mile away. Being stuck in heavy traffic, we'd had a shit day at college. I thought, this is the worst time to record. I'm raging, we're fed up, we're tired, we just want to get on with this and be done with it, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Megan's a brilliant, she's so good at holding down a conversation, and she gave us a lot of insight into life growing up in Cumbernauld as someone that's not really, would typically be associated with the kind of people that live there. No offense, but I think most people would agree. And she talked about certain aspects which I never knew, and for me, it's one of my favourite to listen back to, genuinely. I wouldn't say it's better than these three, but I'd still say it's elite. I don't know what your feelings are on this, though. What are your feelings?
So there's a few ways I look at this, right? So I very much enjoyed it, and I could tell straight away when he's turned up, the mood was sour, but it turned great as soon as we started speaking in a podcast form. Everything flowed well, and she spoke very freely, and like she had already done this with us. And obviously, the idea of living in Cumbernauld was mad. She gave a good insight to that. For me, I struggle to say. I look at the aspect of enjoyment as well, and I very much enjoyed it. But did I enjoy it more than I enjoyed Struan's or Ben's or Rachel's? Honestly, no.
Yeah.
It was on par with them. So, if it was me, I would say I enjoyed Rachel's more than I enjoyed Megan's.
Yeah.
But as a better podcast, Megan's was better because she was older, she knew more, and
it helps well that she's done media as well, and
she just knew what she was doing, which was so much easier.
Yeah.
But Struan brought so much to the table, and then he was also humorous. We also knew parts of him, whereas I knew nothing about Megan going into it, so it was a bit wild.
Yeah. No, I'm more happy. More happy. Give it. Yeah.
I'd be happy to put it up there if you feel strongly about it. But
I do feel strong. I do feel strongly, but I'm more than happy to put it decent. I can see why you would think it would be decent. I'm more than happy to leave it there. Now this might cause some debate here. Where do we put Alba's girlfriend Connor? Now, Connor's
Alba's girlfriend Connor.
Oops.
Wow, that is astonishing. By the way,
it's fine.
I hope you sound clip that. He
doesn't listen to these.
For that reason, never again. Fuck him.
Connor, again, one of the earlier ones, the original holder of the time slot, done very well in that regard. I really enjoyed the stuff about Greece. Connor as well is a very smart guy, can hold a conversation well, and I think he understood it well, which helped. He's one of the most creative people that I know. I wouldn't quite say, though, it was as good as Alba's, as mean as it might sound. I think it was great. I think it was decent. I wouldn't quite put on elite, though, for me.
My issue with it is that he's too intelligent.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, yeah.
When you go to an interview and people tell you, you're too overqualified. This cunt is too overqualified for my intellect.
Yeah.
I like him. Very good conversation. And, when we're on a night out, he's always a good laugh.
Yeah.
And, he's funny enough. We talk away, no bother. But from a podcast point of view, he was far too intelligent for it. which, you know, he could take as a compliment or he can take it as an insult, however he wants. I could not give a fuck. That's he was too intelligent for my liking, but I enjoyed it. It was, you know, and there was an elite aspect to it, but it was definitely decent.
Yeah, nah.
At
I think
minimum.
if I look back, I wouldn't say I thought it was a better podcast, not a better person or anything like that. I wouldn't say it's a better podcast than Megan's. I wouldn't say it was a better podcast than Stu's. I wouldn't say it's a better podcast than Francis's. It's still very good, but I wouldn't say it's better than those ones. Right, Ewan. It's an interesting one. This held the record for a long time as the longest one that we ever done, which is impressive considering we've done this one with the cameras and in the hottest room. It's a weird one because since lockdown has happened, since the whole COVID thing's happened, I've got to know Ewan more than anyone else. Ewan, because we've been in a sort of similar position, Ewan's also been unemployed, unfortunately, during this. But so when the football came back, he was round the mine every day. We still go for walks weekly or play football weekly. So, you know, I speak to the guy virtually every day. And I look back on it, I didn't even really know him that well when we done the first interview with him. And, you know, it helps now that he really enjoys football, which he didn't actually at the time when we were first doing our interview with him. I love the guy. For me, it's still decent though. For me, it still came across a decent podcast. He talked a lot about the army, which was a good insight, similar to James's. I know James has obviously gone on to do more with it. Yeah. But he still gave a good insight into the early stages of it, which I didn't know about. And as well of like, you know, growing up without your parents who have moved abroad to do work, you know, that was quite an interesting sort of aspect as well. For me, it's definitely a decent podcast, but what do you think?
I agree with everything you've said. However, from my point of view, their personalities clashed far too much. So what I mean by that is, so what I mean by it is he's not a snob before you get the wrong idea of this, right? But he lives in Dunblane, and he's no used to macking a personality, if you know what I mean. At least that's how it came across. I felt like he was like, oh, this cunt, he can't speak proper English. He's just a fanny. Do you know what I mean? That's the vibe I got straight away. However, it has changed during the time that I've spent. You know, what very little time. Don't get me wrong. So we went to football. We done the Sunday football.
Yeah.
Limited amount of times.
We've watched football a few times together as well.
We spoke better during those times than what we did at the start. We then watched football when you ordered food, or I ordered food after work, and we watched football at yours.
Watched football a few times, like maybe once a year, and you know, a few times at once. Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I never thought ill of him at all. I just thought, in the very first instance, our personalities clashed a lot. I feel like he was used to more, how do you put it, snobby clientele. Like the people he spoke to prior weren't they, you know, people could speak, like if you speak to me from school to when we spoke to him very first, I could be perceived as anything, whether it was a Ned or whether it was a fucking idiot or.
I think both you and me can though. I don't think it goes just for you.
Me considerably more from you, and from somebody for Dunblane, and then speaking to me, somebody for St Ninians, speaking the way in which I was. I felt the vibe I got was, I've had enough of this cunt. But I knew it wasn't like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I was never part of the situation because you know me, I'm laid back. Like, if that's the way he feels about me, then fine, fuck you. But it wasn't that. It was just that's the vibe I got off it, if you will.
Yeah.
But in general, the actual podcast was okay. You know, I enjoyed, like you say, the aspects of growing up with it. Your parents being there the whole time. Couldn't think of that. Unimaginable for me. So it was amazing to hear that. So in general, the conversation was you know, the parts that were decent. The conversational part from me and how I felt during the podcast was okay.
Okay.
Because it's not something, you know me, like, it's not something that would just hold me back for, like, if somebody felt that way about me when we were doing a podcast, I wouldn't give a fuck. Like, it wouldn't hold me back for doing the interview. It wouldn't, you know, there's very, very little amount that could get me to go, no, I'm not doing a podcast with this individual. You know, if I felt like I was going to say something that I shouldn't have, or if I was going to start something I shouldn't have, then I would refrain from doing the podcast.
Yeah.
But never once felt like that with you, and if you know what I mean. But, and I'm nothing against them at all. But the actual podcast that we done had decent to elite moments. But for me, the conversational piece, from my point of view, was okay.
Okay. Well,
but I would be inclined to agree with decent. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, if you think decent, then
so like it's up there with Francis and stuff is what I was getting at, because like from what I learned.
Yeah, no, I mean Ewan as well, someone I've got to know very well, and I want to have him on again. He unfortunately doesn't drink anymore, but that might be a fun topic of discussion. But, you know, I would like to have him on again. And, you know, I personally never got that vibe from it, but obviously it's different from person to person. But it makes sense if that's the way you feel. Right. Another pretend. In fact, no, yeah, I will say elite for this one. Angus is one. Another relatively recent one. Someone that just got it. Someone that got it better than anyone else here. Someone that understands the game better than anyone else. And considering I didn't know the guy very well, it was such a weird feeling to me that I related to him in basically everything that he chatted to me about. I thought the chat was very good. I thought he was well prepared. I thought he was funny. I think everything about it is great, and it's one of my favourite interviews we've ever done. I would personally put it as elite. Before you, Sam.
Right. Fuck me, by the way. Right, so Angus is 100% going into elite, by the way.
Yeah. Jamie made a slight mistake there, but he realises he was elite now. Okay.
Aye, right. So I went back and looked at the podcast for reference, and
he missed out something. We'll see.
Aye, 1000% Angus is elite. It was by far. So Aiden's podcast earlier, I said, was up there one of my favourites, and it is. But my favourite by far was Angus.
Okay.
100%. It was just amazing. He had information on everything you wanted to know.
Yeah. Definitely. So definitely someone we'll have back on after his big Amazon deal when he can finally chat about it.
Exactly.
I still don't know, by the way, it should piss me off.
No.
On to the third guest. The third host. Dylan. Carries himself really well. I really love Dylan. He's so funny. He's one of my favourite folk that you've introduced me to. Always is up for a laugh. He brought that in, especially for first podcast. He brought that entertainment side of the diss track, which it's an elite podcast in itself. And yeah, I love the boy. The two podcasts in general, I'm not sure I could quite say elite, but they're definitely high decent.
Aye. So overall, we're not rating it as a person. He is an elite. He's an elite cunt. Yeah. By far. Based on the fact he's done it 3 times for us, he's took his role, takes it so well, and look at the thumbnail. The amount of effort he puts into stuff is just that's what amazes me about him, is he always puts in like 100% effort into whatever he does. And like you said, he carries it so well, and his humour is just, it bounces off anybody. So you'll say something and he can make a joke at it in no time at all. He's a bit like me. He's quick-witted, but he's clever with it as well.
Yeah.
But no, it's his effort that he puts into it year in, year out for us is amazing. But it's definitely elite for me.
Oh, you're saying elite?
100%, aye. Based on the fact he's done it 3 years, and it's got slightly worse. Like the third year was.
No, he's only done it 2 years, I think.
No, is it 3? No, he's done it 3 years now.
I think he's only done it 2. Let me quickly check.
The issue is I keep I keep thinking to him, we're going to get him on for a third time by himself with foot. Maybe that's when I'm getting mixed up.
Wait, 20. Yeah, no, he's only been on it twice.
Twice, right? Okay. I thought you said 3 to start as well, though.
Yeah, maybe I said wrong.
So the first year was amazing. Podcast was definitely elite. The second year, I feel as though we knew what was coming, but it still got carried so well, and the 3 years were just good at what we were doing with. So I'd say elite. I think we need to have him. I'd agree with decent if you were happy with that, based on the fact if we had him on as an individual by himself, he could be elite. No, in fact, I know he'd be elite because I know enough about him to know that he would be an elite podcast.
The only thing I will hold against the podcast that we done with him, and it's not against him personally, I just think it's, in a weird way, it felt like too much of just a chat, if you get me. And just having a chat can be great. It works in certain aspects. But I think the podcast we've done with him were too much like just a chat. It might not have made a lot of sense to someone that doesn't listen for like a great deal of time, sort of thing, if you get me.
Aye.
So that would be the only reason for me why it would be indecent. But if you want to say elite, I'm fine putting him up there because he does put in a lot of work for us, which, you know, he doesn't have to do.
Aye, I'd say elite, very much so. But what I would say is if we had him on as an individual, it'd be by far elite, probably one of the best we'd ever do.
We'll get him on at some point on himself.
Because he's got so much stories about his life, it's unbelievable. Don't know whether he would want to like, you know, share all of them, but from what he shared with me, he's fucking phenomenal. Which is the same for his missus. I wish one day we can get her on because her stories are phenomenal, but she's just far too shy to do something like this, which is unfortunate. But I definitely elite for me, and we will get him on as an individual. Right, all of a sudden I can't hear you. Yeah, I cannot hear you at all. Right, okay, what the fuck's going on? What the fuck? I actually cannot hear you at all. Wait, hold on. Speak. Can't hear you, I fucking tell. Oh, speak.
Hello?
Wait, I can fucking hear you again. What the
fuck? Wait,
fuck?
hold on. My fucking audio just changed there. Did you move something?
No.
Oh. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, aye.
No.
Can you not hear me?
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, let's hope this is still working in. It still says it's recording. Yeah, anyway, sorry. So, Fergus, been on it twice now. Foursome episode, which we've been over. One of the worst episodes we've ever done. His actual interview, I think his actual interview was pretty decent. I think he was, in a weird way, a bit too proper for him. I think he was very good at, like, you know, getting into the interview stage. I sort of wish he lightened up a wee bit. But he still came with some good stories, and, you know, I love the guy. You know, we had our differences when we were younger, but I love the boy, and, you know.
He's another person that it pains me to say it, but he is quite smart.
Yeah.
He is smart. But, you know, he's got a lot of embarrassing moments, which were good for him to share. Yeah. And he's funny, just gets the humour. As per pretty much everybody in this list, they just got the humour. But Fergus in particular just brings a lot to the table. It was, like you say, he wasn't free flowing, which was disappointing because if he was, it would have been fucking hilarious. But no, for me, it's definitely decent. And you know what? Never again, because he started off doing something for us and he fucked up and he stopped it. Fuck him. Nah.
There we go.
No, he's very decent. Nah, he's decent.
Do you think, though, the episodes with him were decent? Because for me personally, I think I don't want to say this to dishearten the guy, but like I don't think his episodes were as good as any of these for me, I think his episode is on the okay, on the okay sort of spectrum. So I want to have him on again, like, because especially in the last few years, he's improved so much. That person has done so much that he could. I think maybe that
I
was
would be inclined to agree.
I think that was maybe the mistake we have doing that foursome episode, because he did have so much that he wanted to chat about, I think, but I just don't think we could get around to it. And he's very good at being. The thing that I appreciate with him compared to like a person like Ben, for example, that I appreciate is that he did like he was trying to be professional, but was too professional in a way. So
100%.
For that, it's definitely okay, but I do want to have him on again, because I think if we do have him on again on his own, under the right circumstances, it could be decent or elite.
Yeah.
Now, the most different podcast we ever done, the one with Craig, fellow podcaster himself. It was a very strange one for you and me to set up. It was very different. I really enjoyed it. I felt at times
it was good.
I felt at times, because he was the more experienced host, he was at times asking you and me questions, which was a bit strange.
No, it was good as well, though. I enjoyed that. I was going to bring that up. I enjoyed the idea of getting interviewed while interviewing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing I enjoyed about Rachel's as well. Rachel she asked us umpteen questions.
Oh yeah, I even forgot about that part. We just weren't expecting it.
Which was, you know, and that's why I think I enjoyed it a bit more than some of the others that are in that list. But no, I enjoyed Craig's. I thought it was different. It was an insight to something new. It gave us.
It was good to be on his podcast as well. It was nice for us, you know.
It gave us experience as well, which I feel like we've. Well, at least I took on board while interviewing someone. But no, I enjoyed it. If it was up to me though, in terms of the podcast, the way it looked was okay. But in terms of, you know, what I learned and the way it went back and forth, it was decent. But for me, the actual podcast, it was okay.
Okay. I think it was decent, but I'm happy to put in like the high end okay.
The only reason I would put it on okay over decent, because that says it was a very decent conversation and I learned a lot from him, as well as the idea of getting interviewed while interviewing.
It wasn't as natural as the rest of these, though, was it? Which is, I think, something that we struggled with.
Aye, so for that, it would be okay for me.
I do want to, like you and me have both said multiple times, we do want to do something like that again with people that we don't know at all, so to speak. But I think that's the unfortunate thing of just when you are, you know, as small as we are, it might be a bit difficult to get some people on. But we'll all always appreciate Craig and giving us a chance and being the first one to sort of jump on. And so, I appreciate that from him. Right, 2 more left. James Craig, elite human, love the boy. And I think his podcast,
his banter's sublime as well, though.
I'm teetering on decent and okay for me personally. Like, he did give us a lot of detail, and I appreciate like what he was chatting about, and you know, his humour quite at times, sometimes like dry pan. But I think it was also interesting because he's the only person out of this lot that was also in like our like form class in high school. So it really was like, also we've chatted about our experience in high school, but it was nice to give someone that actually was there as well to sort of give their account of what you and me were like and what the whole class was like, it was nice.
It was just this wee curly haired guy at school that was funny.
Yeah, no. Such a.
But see, when I look at it though, right, his podcast was, in my opinion, decent, but not as good as anybody on that list. Because I really enjoyed it, and the conversation.
I'd be inclined to agree with you as well. I'm looking at the okay section, and I think it sort of probably more comes around like the level of Bradley, Ben, Neil. I think it sort of is more in around with that. So for that reason, I think we'll have to put him in okay.
But James, big up.
Yeah, big up, James. Love that boy. And finally,
last,
Ben Francis. Ben. Now, the start of this, I have never been more terrified than at the very start of this. Now, I know a lot about Ben sort of off camera and what we chatted about, and he's someone that I hold very close to me, and he's always someone that's looked out for me, and I always will appreciate the boy. And at the start though, because normally we usually, when we sort of start these, we sort of say, oh, you know, if there's anything that you don't want, you know, we'll take out, or, you know, just sort of say if you don't want to go down a certain topic. However, with Ben, a lot of his sort of stories that I had prepared in my mind for how the podcast would go, he didn't want to chat about, which is completely fair, and I understand there's good reasons why. But it left me fucking panicking at the start. It's like, can't really talk about that. So I was like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? But to be fair to him, after a nervous first like 10 minutes, he talked very well and he gave a good interview, and I will still appreciate that from him, because I could tell that he was nervous about opening up a wee bit more. I don't think, unfortunately, because of that, it can be decent. And it was good having the wee rivalry about rugby and football. That was interesting, and hearing about someone's experience sort of going through a Scotland team. That's, you know, that's interesting stuff. I don't think though it can be decent. I think it's okay level, or maybe could be improved on. What is your thoughts?
Never again, because he likes rugby. Nah. It was good, and we flowed back and forth about random topics, such as the rugby football situation. But if I was to rate the podcast and how I felt during it, how I enjoyed it, it was below par for me, which would be the kind of could be improved on. But the conversational piece and the back and forth that that happened, you know, and it had an element in which we could talk about in terms of rugby and football, would put me into the okay bracket. But the question I would, you know, put to you is, would it be as good as Joski's, or is it better? Because if you think that Ben's is better than Joski's, I honestly had my hands up to say that Joski needs to go down one.
No, I think Joe's was a better podcast than Ben's.
Right, so then we're on it. For me, then on that, on what you've just said, it would be could be improved on.
I think
but
that's
at the same
fair.
time, it was okay.
Yeah. And there we are. I did take a fucking long time, a lot longer than I did expect to go on once. But just before we move on this and clear up, so in the elite category, we have you, Mackenzie, Albert, Angus, Aidan, and Dylan. If you're looking for the best episodes to go back and listen to. In decent, we've got Francis, Struan, Ewan Boyle, Connor Dunbar, Megan, Ben Crawford, Rachel, and James Letford. And okay, we've got Craig, Neil, Bradley, Lewis, James, Graham, Ben Gilmore, Keelan, Joe, Fergus, and could be improved upon Lauren, Mark, Ben, and Duncan. Now, before we do go on, what was your favourite? Is it Angus's one? Is that your favourite that we've ever done?
Aye, before you go off this as well, let me take a picture of this.
Just so you can.
Well,
do you want me to take you a screenshot and send it to you so it's in better quality?
Aye, go for it. Aye, please do.
This will be rinsing material, I know, for you for a while now.
What?
I'm impressed. I thought there would be a lot more arguments about the ranking of these than there actually. I thought we were going to have some heavy debates about this, but I'm shocked. I'm happy to see that there wasn't too many disagreements.
My favourite one, based on everything, was definitely Angus. Coming into it, the guy just didn't seem like he was. I don't want to say he seemed boring, but you know, he had a personality that came across as like, I'm quiet, I'm not really, you know, I keep myself. And then the way he came across was just fucking mind blowing, and we just spoke for so long, just so freely about random topics. He was knowledgeable, very intelligent, doing his own stuff. As obviously the whole Amazon thing that we don't know about. I'm still excited to know what it is to this day.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd very much ideally like to keep in contact. I know he plays games back and forth, so for that side of things, by far my favourite. Aidan's was up there. I've enjoyed a few others for my own reasons, such as James. I thought the conversation was just amazing. We had banter. Rachel's was great because I didn't really know her. Bradley's for what I didn't expect and I received.
Yeah.
Craig's for, you know, each has got their own you know, great parts of it, but my favourite by far was Angus, 100%.
Yeah. I'm happy to see that we've never done a terrible podcast with a guest. We've had some not great ones, but we've never done a terrible one with a guest. We've
Like
done
if
some
we're rating episodes, we've had some howlers.
actually, no,
ones...
sorry. The fucking foursome episode is
Aye,
probably the set. That's like the second worst we've ever done. That probably should never have been uploaded, but because because we got them in, I can't really take it down.
Aye.
But yeah, in terms for me, Angus up there is one of my favourites. I can't tell if it's between him and the first one we done with you, and it's like my favourite too. And then in terms of personal enjoyment, I really love Francis. I really love Megan's. The second half of Ben's, like I said, was like some of the best interviewing I think that you and me have ever done. Like that's such a good thing in terms of like actual interviewing from you and me point of view. I think the best that we've ever been on was the Aidan one, was the Struan one, was the Ben one, and the Craig one. Those are like the four where you and me are like at our peak. Like that's the best we've ever been, in my opinion. But yeah,
do you mean asking questions and stuff like?
Yeah, in terms of just being general interviewers, I think that's the best both you and me have ever been, was in like those 4 episodes. But no, that was really interesting. I'm glad we've done this because it was good to sort of relive it all and I suppose give the audience an insight of what to listen to if they want to go back and listen to any of these. But yeah, once again, thanks to everyone though for being on. I mean, we've been going now 3.5 years and we appreciate everyone for coming on. And, you know, like we said, just because some people might be down here, you know, don't think it's because of you, you know. Everyone on this list is putting effort, you know. And for that, me and Jamie will always appreciate it and we'd be happy to have you back on again for another one.
Indeed.
Apart from Fergus.
Aye, fuck Fergus.
Right. Anyway, that also went on a lot longer than I expected. So we'll round it off in another minute. However, there's some debate going on, Jamie, as you know. Who is the most knowledgeable football man?
Well, by far me.
Well, considering you've not won any of these challenges yet. However, for those that don't know what we're talking about, back in episode 61, we done like a wee predictions video, you know, back to our roots in many ways. We used to do quite a few back in the day. You know, predicting, you know, usually Premier League. I think we've done the World Cup as well one time, and now we're doing the Champions League. We've done just the quarterfinal stage though, okay? So I don't know who's won, okay? I genuinely don't know who's won, okay? Because I've forgotten a few of the results. So I'm going to rely on you now, if you don't mind, to look up who won each of the quarterfinals, just so we have confirmation.
Okay. It's a bit of a pain in the ass because I fucking played across 4 weeks.
I know.
Only really last week's, I need to be fair, but right. Okay.
Right. The first match we predicted was Juventus v Porto. And now, very annoyingly, I said during the video that I was so sure they would go through, but it was stupid to bet against Ronaldo, so I went for Juventus. And you were super confident they could go all the way, but guess who won?
So
the Mighty Dragons. So 0-0 as of yet.
Yep.
The next match was Bayern v Lats. No, sorry, it was Atletico v Chelsea. Both you and me said Atletico. Both you and me are wrong. Chelsea won that quite convincingly, actually.
Simeone for a sack.
Yeah, so we're not doing great at the moment. But it's where things get better. Bayern v Lazio. Be a bit stupid if any of us said Lazio.
Aye, we're both correct.
So one each. Then,
Mhm.
Jamie,
Hmm.
you are certain Atalanta would go through against Madrid. And they did not. They won. And as such, I am now 2-1 to you.
2-1 to you, aye.
2-1 to me.
Mhm.
Next, it's Man City versus Gladbach. Obviously, both you and me aren't thick. We went for Man City.
Yep.
However, you did teeter on the idea of going for a Gladbach.
I really just didn't want them to go for it, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, this one you said I was an idiot. I was foolish for picking. It's Dortmund v Sevilla. Now, yes, okay, you bet on Dortmund. They did go through. However, it was fucking close, and I was unlucky not to fucking get it. But the game's the game. It's now 2 each.
You know, the issue with the Dortmund game as well, by the way, is they're playing so bad this year that the Champions League, I think, honestly, is the last thing that they've got left.
Yeah.
Especially Haaland. If they want to keep Haaland, it's the last thing they need to go guns blazing for it. Because I don't know.
Well, that's what they were doing. They literally fucking pushed everything on the back of
exactly,
Haaland's square.
But they've got to, because I don't know if you've seen him when he went off the other day. He said he's sick of this shitting through his jumper, his t-shirt away and stuff.
Aye, but he's very much like a Zlatan, Ronaldo sort of arrogant type, you know. Not saying that in a bad way, just saying that's clearly his personality.
It's good arrogance to have.
Next, Jamie. A fat L for you here. You bet on the mighty Barcelona to beat PSG, and Mbappe fucking destroyed them at the new camp. True. Meaning that it's 3-2 to me.
Fucking embarrassing as well, you know that. Messi's a shadowy Ronaldo.
Fuck off. No, he's not.
Absolute shadow, by the way.
He has, in fact, he's got more goals and assists than games this year.
So's fucking Alfredo Morelos. You don't see me creaming my pants.
No, he's fucking does he actually?
Like, two of them combined. Do you mean?
Yeah, goals and assists this year.
Aye, he's got more than
games.
Not like more goals in games and more assists in games, but combined, aye.
Right.
But like, I'll not cream my pants over it. But you know, Messi's a shadow of what he used to be.
Fuck.
A shadow of Ronaldo.
Chat and shit, you know it. And then the final one. If I win this, I'll take it all.
We guessed the same one with us.
No, we didn't.
Wait, did we know?
No, we didn't, Jamie.
Who's the last game?
Because it was RB Leipzig versus Liverpool, and I was certain with how bad Liverpool are playing, that was the end. So little did I know that RB Leipzig bottled it all, meaning that it is unfortunately a draw. However, there's only one thing to do now, isn't there?
Guess the winner.
Or the quarterfinals.
What do you mean the quarter? Oh, like the next round?
What would you rather do? It all?
No.
Oh, well done.
The whole comp. Oh.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you now. What are you saying? Winner of the whole thing?
I say we just guess the winner of the whole thing.
Okay. Now, Liverpool have the easy...
If both of us are wrong, then we patch it.
Liverpool are on the easier side of the draw. Okay, there's no denying.
What?
Liverpool are on...
Aye, for sure, aye.
Okay, so it's Bayern v PSG, and who's the other team on the other side? Man City and someone else. I forget. The easy team.
Porto, is it no?
No, Porto have got Chelsea.
Oh, that's right. Aye.
And we've got Real Madrid, but it's a Madrid side that's very weak compared to normal. Yeah. Go on then. Who wins it all, Jamie?
See, I'm swirling with two teams, right?
Okay.
Because I horrible for me to say, but I genuinely believe PSG can win it this year.
Based on they beat Bayern in the next game. Over 2 legs.
Aye, Bayern's been very poor this year. Like, but no, that's a lie. They've been very below par in comparison to what they were. No, genuinely, right? All jokes aside, they're missing Thiago, but Liverpool are suffering for having him. He's such a talented football player, and he brings so much to a team like Bayern Munich. But for us, it's just not got the game yet.
I think he'll get there at some point.
Potentially.
I don't think he's been as bad as folk have said he has been this year, but he's definitely obviously not been his Bayern best sort of thing.
He's not been great. Lewandowski's started to find his goals. He scored a cracker for Poland last night, got himself in a great position, got them in a free each with Hungary. But I think PSG can get past Bayern because Mbappe's in inspired form. The issue I face is
that
Neymar,
high line as well that Bayern play. That's fucking.
That's scary if you are Mbappe.
And they won't change because you see last year in the final they played with that high line. That obviously Mbappe and
they got
Neymar
the better of them in general.
Yeah, but I mean that game could have easily been a 0-0 if it was.
The thing is, Neymar is non-existent constantly. Like I wish I could just call him shitting people when they give me grief for it. Because he's so bang average.
No, he's not though. He's like
he is, man.
See him on his best. I'm not saying his best comes around often anymore. I'm not saying he's.
You talk about MSN days.
Like even nowadays, so like right, don't get me wrong, he's always injured and it's always a pain in the arse like when he goes over. But see when he's at his peak, especially like in the quarterfinals and the semi-finals last year at Champions League. He was destroying teams on his own. He could just dribble past everyone. And he gives, I'm not saying, by the way, he's as good or as entertaining, but he reminds me a lot of Ronaldinho back in the way of just how he glides effortlessly past people at his best.
It's the issue I face is, right? MSM, unmatched. It was probably the best he'll ever be.
Yeah.
My issue is, right, is he went over to France. He thought it was a Farmers League. He took the piss. You know, he was taking the ball off his back and then taking it past players. And he's so skillful. Never take that away from him.
He's one of the most naturally gifted footballers of the last 10 years. I don't think you can. Him and like De Bruyne and Messi, you cannot. They're like the most naturally gifted footballers around at the moment.
The issue I face is he dives constantly. He goes down too easy. He's a whinging bastard. He gets injured randomly after no playing.
Yeah.
He's so lazy is the way I see him.
This is why he'll unfortunately never be seen as the best. But for me, I still like on his day, I love watching him. He's one of my favourite players to watch on his day.
I think most players can be like that though. That's the issue.
He brings a certain enjoyment. He brings a certain enjoyment.
If you ask me the top 5 in the world, right on their day, you'd rather watch them than Neymar. I guarantee you can name me 5 players you would name before you would name him. Like, so for example, for me, like if you say to me in their prime, who would you want to watch still playing? Mine would be Suarez, Ronaldo, Messi, De Bruyne as your 4. And if you think for a fucking second that Neymar gets in ahead of them, no.
Who was your 4, sorry? Suarez.
So Suarez on his day.
Oh yeah, it was one of the best I've ever seen. Yeah.
Even at Barca though, right? People didn't appreciate what he like the way he takes the ball at the air and finishes. He just knows where the goal is.
Yeah.
Him on his day, unfucking believable. Ronaldo, you know what he's capable of. Messi, shadowy still, but you know what he's capable of. And then
the thing with Ronaldo is Ronaldo as well is incredible to watch for me, but he's different, incredible. Like the way he strikes the ball and scores the goal, all incredible. I love watching that part of him. But it's like the wee things for Neymar, like you say, like the way he makes things that every players do, he makes them look better in some regards. And that's like the part of him that I appreciate, if that makes sense.
He's one of the most skillful players you'll ever see.
Yeah. So I'm saying it reminds me of like a Ronaldinho.
100%. But those 4 players on their day, I would rather watch than Neymar. And then I have got a 5th, but I'd be slithering him. And Neymar isn't even one of them.
Okay.
Like, watching on their day, right? You know, there's 4 attackers I've gave you. Or you can
call De Bruyne whatever you want, but he's an attacker. On their day, I'd watch Van Dijk every day of the week. His defending, his positional play is so fucking good, and his strides that he takes, it's just amazing. Now, would I rather watch him than Neymar? 100%. There's my 5 I'd rather watch than watch Neymar, because even on Neymar's prime, in his prime day, he's playing amazing, he still dives. He still has the tomfoolery side of his game, which pisses me off. Like, he goes down far too easy, whether it's an actual dive, he goes down far too easy, which pisses me off. And I don't know if you've seen recently, but like Mane in our last 3 Liverpool games, there's been times where he could have won a penalty, should have won a penalty, but he never went down. Whereas if that's Neymar, less contact would take him down, which pisses me off. Mo Salah's another player who had, like, that first season at Liverpool is unmatched. But Neymar, you would watch more because on a regular basis, Neymar brings amazing moments to you. For me, honestly, he's not even the top 5. He struggles to get in the top 10 best players in the world. And that's, people would disagree with me, but I don't like him at all for that very reason. But he is, I can appreciate how good he is.
I fully understand, and it's not like that I'm saying, he's at his best anymore. I will say is, in his prime his day as such, like his day doesn't come as often as it used to anymore, unfortunately. But when he hits his day, it's just, for me at least, it's something different. It's like the appreciation that I used to get when I used to watch Prime Barca with Xavi and Iniesta. Like, they do such simple things in the game that no one else, like, they would often not really care about. But like their passing and their accuracy, and it's just like always something I just watch, just like, holy shit, they make this such a simple part of the game look unreal. But yeah. Anyway, we've got really off topic there. So are you saying PSG is going through?
No, I think Bayern will win because Neymar will not show up. Neymar is
I don't think he's playing. I think he's out of the game, injured.
Yeah,
shock.
So he's out of it. What shock? And it's very much reliant on Mbappe to take out still a very good Bayern team with a world class goalkeeper, great defense, great midfield. Kimmich alone is world class, and then that attack is scary, and Sané and Lewandowski and stuff. So no, I don't think they'll go through.
So who do you think Bayern can win it? Who do you think Bayern will play? Oh, you don't think they'll win it?
I don't think Bayern will win it.
Who's winning it then?
They'll be in the final, and they'll be in the final with Liverpool.
You said Liverpool.
And I think Liverpool will win it.
There is a lot of similarity.
We're a European team.
Sorry?
That's the thing. We're a European team. It's great we've won 18, 19, 20 titles, and you could talk about this all you want. We are an elite European side, and we will always be that.
I mean, we've won 3 more than the next UK team.
Yeah. You look at Benfica, right? Benfica consistently are first or second in the Portuguese league.
Yeah.
But Porto is in an elite European side. They've just got it. They're up against Chelsea in the latter stage of a Champions League tournament, but they're not top of the league. Benfica's. We are sat 6th, 7th or something in the Premier League, but again, we've just put out RB Leipzig, who were on a good run of form. We are a very exciting young German manager, and 2 goals don't go in the first leg because they were a bit squeaky. They would have won that tie.
Yeah,
it could have been swithered either way. In general, us in Porto are European sides. That's the difference. Man City are going nowhere because they're not a European side. They've not got the outfit. I don't care what anybody says. They're playing great this season. They're playing much better than what they have done, but they'll still stumble.
I just think it gets to a certain point though where Pep can get it wrong only so many amount of times, because he's still, in my opinion, an elite manager. And
by far, aye.
I'm not necessarily saying they'll win it, but I think they have a great chance of getting.
I don't think they could put out PSG or Bayern Munich though.
I think they've got a tougher time of doing that, yeah. There is a lot of similarities as well between this year and 05, it's in Istanbul again. if us and Chelsea both win our next games, we're playing again in the semi-finals, and we're also we're also in a season where we probably won't get Champions League football, as mental as that sounds.
Yep.
In the same regard, though, there's a lot of similarities for Chelsea. The year they won it in 2012, sacked a manager mid-season. They could play Bayern in the final, a Bayern side that's been talked about as one of the best ever, but does have its fragilities, and they're coming to form right at the right time. And again, not finishing the Champions League. So there's these stories and these history books about to repeat themselves, potentially. So you're saying Liverpool win it all?
I think Liverpool will do it. I believe massively in us, which, as you know, for me, I struggle. I struggle to watch games this season because I just think we're terrible. And there's been games where I've not watched it, whereas I'd religiously watch every Liverpool game regardless. We could have been playing fucking Brentford in the first round of the Cup. I'd watch it because it's Liverpool. I support them regardless. But I struggle to watch it this year because of how bad and how wrong Klopp's getting it. But I'm still watching the Champions League because the be-all and end-all is we are a European side. And I can live with it. I can live with being a European side.
This does as well mean a lot to us, because if we don't win this and we don't get top four, the implications could be massive for next year. Like, we might not sign anyone, sort of thing.
We struggle to sign and we struggle to keep. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I hope this is actually one of the toughest years for me to predict, because although there are elite sides left, bar Man City, there's not a genuine elite side this year for me.
Playing well, do you mean?
Yeah. But for me, I want to say it'll be Bayern. Logically, it makes the most sense. However, I think that genuinely, part of me thinks it'll be PSG this year. Part of me thinks, in a weird way.
I've got that inkling as well. That's what I was saying at the start.
If Liverpool, I'll put this crux on it, okay? If Liverpool get to the final, I say we win it. Doesn't matter who we're playing, I say we will win it. However, in general, for this bet, I'm going to say PSG. Okay.
Right. Okay. Just note this. I say PSG to begin with. I feel like it's just got paper now.
So even though you've lost every single bet, this is why. Yeah.
So you think Bayern will get put out of PSG?
Logically, I mean, my head says Bayern, my heart says PSG. And I'm often the pessimist at this stage, but for once, it's such a weird year. I feel like anything can happen. I'm going to go PSG. But yeah, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if Bayern won it all. And like I said,
the thing is, it's crazy because we sit here and we say Liverpool's got the easier side. We still need to play a Chelsea team that knows inside it. Not Europeanly, may I add. And they're in a good run of form, an okay run of form, I'd say.
Don't take it away though. This could easily be a year that we somehow, because of how bad everything's gone, we go to the Bernabeu and get humped 3-0 somehow. I can see that.
We could. You can't get rid of Zidane that easy. But he bred stuff in that players that they'll never lose. So it's a tough one to call. But I think put it this way, right? If PSG get past Bayern Munich and we get past Madrid, we've won. Because there's fucking not a chance PSG beat us in the final.
I also don't think, if we get to the final, I also believe without a shadow of a doubt we will win, which is a weird confidence considering how bad we played. However, though, something in my heart's telling me PSG finally do it this year. But yeah. This has gone on a lot longer than I expected, and I'm being called away at this point, so I'm now running late, so I'll need to jump off for now. But our predictions, and you can come back and laugh at us in a few weeks when both PSG and Liverpool have been paid out, and you can laugh at us. But no, that was a very interesting episode. It was good to sort of chat, rekindle memories as such.
Yeah, indeed.
But yeah. Until next time, I suppose. I've been Liam Whyte.
I've been Jamie Allan.
We'll see you all next week. Goodbye.
We talk football and current events, sitting and chatting with the very best guests. With two Scottish boys and we're loving it. So if you like witty banter, check the former #1 podcast on iTunes. Sitting and chatting